Nishkincina Prabhu will be talking on Canto 7, The Science of God, Chapter 15, Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. Hare Krishna, welcome back, Prabhu, and over to you. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, Dharmendra Prabhu. Thank you for having me. And good to be back. It's been many, many months since I've been on these sessions. So, yeah, yeah, I think we just get straight into it. What I'll do, I'll just do a quick prayer and then we can start. Om Agnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhubhyo cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, so yeah, I feel very honored, privileged to be back with all of you, especially during this month of Kartik. As you will know, at least, well, some of you may know that this is a very special month, and it says that whatever Krishna conscious activities one does in this month, whether it's in terms of their sadhana, their service, or the sangha that they keep, gets multiplied thousand times more. So that's really, really nice. So it's my benefit that I've got this opportunity to say something, and I'll do my best to try and like convey certain points. My apologies. I try to have a PowerPoint. This time I don't have a PowerPoint on me because it's just been very busy right now. But I think hopefully just through a discussion we can actually bring out and extract certain key salient nuggets of wisdom that can benefit all of us, especially myself actually. And obviously at the same time I want to make it clear that it's there to be a interactive session. So if at any point anyone wants to ask questions, please do so. I'm happy to kind of try to respond to any queries that people may have or any comments people may make on the topic at hand. And yeah, we'll take it like that. So obviously we're on Canto 7, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 15, which is Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. So obviously you can know that right now this is like a mammoth, epic canto actually. I mean, so famous. I mean, this is the canto in which we have the whole Narasimhadev, Prahlad Maharaj pastime going on, where with the destruction of Hiranyakashipu. And of course, in this canto specifically, we have Narada Muni carrying on with his discourse about how to attain true success, especially when one gets the human form of life, which we get after many, many lives. Like, after being in so many different species, here we actually get this kind of like this birth. And in this chapter, Narad Muni is kind of describing the path of human beings, civilized human beings, very much kind of grihastha centered. Is very much kind of like from a grihastha type of lens. Narad Muni has already kind of described a bit about different varnas, specifically from a Brahminical viewpoint, like what are Brahmanas, how are Brahmanas, and why Brahmanas are so important in society, which I might add is actually quite interesting because, in the modern age, Brahminical culture is not like, it's not like overtly valued. You know what I mean? We're living in Kali Yuga. It's interesting. Different varnas, they come into play, and it's funny because later on this chapter will touch on it as well when it talks about Brahminical. But different varnas, they come into play, and they sometimes get dominant at different ages of mankind's history. But the issue is this, that when those varnas are not dovetailed and aligned with a a divine purpose, those varnas can actually become quite devastating as well. So I'll give you an example. It says that when it comes to varnas, like Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, all of them are actually needed in society. All of them have to be synergistically working together. If one, especially in Kali Yuga, if one has the good fortune of actually finding out the Varna and working in it, it's actually quite an amazing experience. It's actually very satisfying because so many people are going through so much stress because they're not actually situated rightly according to their psychophysical nature. They might be in the wrong career. They might be in the wrong relationships, and not feeling quite like, they might feel like a fish that's expecting to behave like a monkey, or a monkey that's expecting to behave like a fish, depending what kind of environment you're in. They're measured according to success parameters, which are not their own. So once one does find out what their varna is and works in that respect, it is very satisfying. However, and this is where I should add this, it's not enough. It's not enough. Because if you find your varna and you're not actually oh, hello? Can anyone hear me? Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. Don't know what happened there. Yeah, if you do find your varna, but then you don't dovetail it to some sort of divine perspective, that same varna can still not, doesn't mean that you'll experience like that initial satisfaction of finding your nature and everything will fade away and you'll degrade as well. That's why it says that with varnashram, it's two aspects. It's the karma, the sort of work that you should do according to your psychophysical nature, as well as the guna, the quality, the level of consciousness in which you're operating by. So, for example, if you're a brahmana, every varna has a mission to fight something. If you're a brahmana, your mission is to fight ignorance, which is either brahmanas are the educators, the teachers of society. You're there to fight ignorance. If you're a Kshatriya, you're there to fight infringement, from stopping people getting exploited, protecting people. If you're a Vaishya, you are there to fight insufficiency, right? You're there to make sure that people are being properly provided for. And if you're a Sudra, you're there to fight indolence. But this is the thing. If those same varnas are not, all of this can be happening. You could be in your varna and be in line with your mission if you are living your varnic, doing your varnic duties with a high consciousness, which can only come if you're practicing some level of God consciousness. If you take that God consciousness out of the situation, then what happens? Those brahmanas, instead of fighting ignorance, they end up going into ignorance themselves and promoting ignorance. Which is why in Kali Yuga right now, if you look at the modern society, there's lots of isms going on right now in the world, whether it's religious isms, political isms, sociological isms about how we should live our life, etc., etc. And what it is, it's actually creating no harmony, but actually creating a lot of disturbance in society, which is why you can see right now there's a lot of geopolitical and social disturbances that are cropping up all over the world. The Brahmanas themselves are putting themselves into ignorance. Now, let's look at the Kshatriyas. When Kshatriyas are not aligned with a transcendental mission, those very same Kshatriyas, instead of protecting people and fighting infringements, can become brutal as you like. They can become very harsh, brutal, and oppressive. And if you look at a lot of the history of the kind of like, well, let's say Kali Yuga, since Kali Yuga started in 5,000 years ago, we can see the history. I mean, whether you're, Western history, Eastern history, you can see all the different empires that have come and gone, the cruel kings and the cruel empires and the oppressions and the slavery and obviously colonialism and this and that. And, I don't need to go into it. We see the world as it is. Kshatriya's gone mad, And then, of course, you've got Vaishyas. Vaishyas, when they're not situated properly, instead of fighting in insufficiency, they end up becoming most exploitative. They'll end up trying to squeeze as much as they can out of the people. They also have a tendency to want to try and relegate everyone to the status of a Sudra. So that gives them more opportunity to try and control people and squeeze what they can from it. Squeeze people more, make them work harder, put more in stringent measures on them to work for their penny's worth. Maybe also take away more and more of their hours so that they can work, increase the retirement age, increase the working hours per day, increasing the working days per week until it's just work, 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 right? For maximum profit for a very few people. Again, I don't need to go too much into a sociological discourse on it. If one looks at the world right now, one can see such things happening, right? And then, of course, you've got the Sudras. Sudras, instead of fighting indolence, end up becoming very indulgent themselves. They become very status obsessed, and they end up wallowing in their own self-pity, and just degrade further and further. So these are the different varnas, but it's not enough being in a varna. They have to be situated. Brahminical culture nowadays is not so much valued because it is quite actually a cerebral, ethereal kind of like a way of looking at things, you know? A Brahmana's worth is not exactly something you can easily quantify. So like, like by the minute, by the hour, how much productivity they're bringing. A lot of Brahmanas, they'll guide, they'll teach. These are things that are not so easy to quantify, but they have tremendous value to them. Sometimes Brahmanas may spend a lot of time developing, great piece of work, but you might not see the results straight away, which is why it will be harder for them to garner investment, for them to promote their Brahminical projects. But nonetheless, they are needed. Not just any Brahmanas, though, Brahmanas who are aligned in Krishna consciousness. Now, what does Narad say, Narad Muni? Narad Muni talks about that there are different types of Brahmanas. There are, if you look at from text 1 to 11, there are gradation of different Brahmanas. This is the 1 to 11 in chapter 15, by the way, right? There is Karma Nishta. These are Grihastas who are very much kind of ritualistically minded. They perform the rituals. They're devoted to performing rituals. Okay, then you've got the Taponishta, Vanaprasthas, devoted to austerities. Then you've got the Swadhyaya Nishtas, the Brahmacharis, who are devoted to studying and preaching the Vedas. And of course, you've got the Jnana Nishtas, who are the sannyasis, who are devoted to culturing knowledge and bhakti. Of these four types of Brahmanas, the ones who are Jnana Nishtas, which are like the sannyasis, they're the most, I guess you could say the most superior. I know that's not English. English language-wise, that's not very good English, but you know what I mean. They are superior amongst the four types. Okay, so you got ritualistic ones who follow rituals generally for some sort of fruitive gain, right? You got the taponishtas that will do austerities that will help them develop their empowerment, their potency. You got obviously the swadhyaya nishtas, swadhyaya, which means devoted to studying, your brahmacharis. But it's the ones who then end up culturing that knowledge with the aim of sharing it with others with a devotional perspective who are the best, right? Who are the best. There is actually, you'll notice there's somewhat of a relationship between the varnas and the ashramas. So you got the varnas, which I mentioned, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. You've also got the ashramas, which is like Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. It's not that every single person who comes into Krishna consciousness, and especially as Varnashram, as a concept, as a social concept, gets more and more developed. It's not that everyone has to go through the four ashrams, by the way, just so you know, right? Only those who are Sudras, right? They can stay in Grihastha. They're not just they can, they're encouraged to stay in Grihastha ashram their whole life, actually, right? They're not expected to go into the other ashrams, even into old age. They can stay with their families. Sudras are most materially kind of attached. So therefore, let them shine in the Grihastha ashram. They can still be Krishna conscious, by the way. You know what I mean? But it's actually better for them to stay in a Grihastha ashram, grow old in the ashram, help with the family, community. Because Sudras are very good at, very community orientated, right? They're very culture orientated as well. So let them stay in that situation and practice their KC. Go back to Godhead like that. You got the Vaishyas. The Vaishyas are expected to do some time in the Brahmachari ashram. If you're a young Vaishya boy, you're expected to spend some time getting some good quality training in the Brahmachari ashram. Once they've done that, though, then they go into Grihastha life. And that's it. They don't need to go beyond that. Kshatriyas can go into, they are expected to go into Brahmachari life, do that studying. This is mainly applying to the males, of course, not so much the females, if we're going to go shastrically speaking. Of course, yes, we do have female ashrams nowadays. That's like a innovation that Prabhupada himself brought on, because a lot of the women in the West needed it. They weren't being protected by society. But if you're looking at the Vedic style, it was the boys that they would talk about. Anyway, so they would then also go for, the Kshatriya boys would go for Brahmachari life, Grihastha life, and then they are expected to go into Vanaprastha. Which is why, since you've come all this, you've gone on an amazing journey. You're on Canto 7 now. You've come across so many Kshatriyas, great Kshatriyas already. And what they do? After a certain point, they give up their kingdom, their treasury, their house, their wife, their children, and they go to the Vanaprastha. Whether it's King Prithu Maharaj, whether it's King Parikshit Maharaj, whether it's King Yudhishthir Maharaj, whether it's King Prachinabari Maharaj or Prachinabari Sat Maharaj, whether it's King Bharat Maharaj, you name it. I'm sure you've come across a lot of these kings already in your journey. What do? Every single one of them ends up, they don't stay in the kingdom forever, do they? After a certain point, that's it, cut. Move it on. Now you focus on, full on focus on your spiritual life. Of course, there is one thing to be said here. That doesn't mean that a Kshatriya decides to take up spirituality then. They are practicing spirituality. A good quality Kshatriya would practice spirituality throughout their life. And then when they become Vanaprastha, that's a time for them to kind of just really kind of deep dive, immerse themselves in it. But even when they're ruling the kingdom, it's not that they neglect their spiritual life. It's still the center of their lives. In fact, a king's duty is actually, according to the scriptures, is not just the economic, the economic health of the country. It's to look at the spiritual health of the country. That's why they're known as Raja Rishis, saintly kings. Their duty was to make sure that the citizens in the country, which included animals and other entities as well as humans, were being delivered on the path back to Krishna, either being delivered to Krishna or on the path back to Krishna. What a far cry from the modern leadership that we have in the world, where spirituality doesn't even get a look in. It's about economics mainly. Not that the modern global leadership is doing economics very well either, because we have financial issues going on around the whole world. You know what I mean? The one thing that they do try to promote, they're not even doing that very well, and it wouldn't be, would it? Because if you look at the modern system, because it's Vaishya dominated, Vaishyas were not situated properly, by the way. It's about growth. You can't just grow infinitely. At some point, something's going to give. You can't just grow infinitely. You have to harmonize with the world. But the harmonize has to come, it's a holistic process. You have to have spirituality as the foundation. If you try and separate your kind of economics and this other kind of like whatever social things from the spiritual aspect of it, you're trying to create a culture which is kind of like handicapped. You need the whole thing to actually make the world actually harmonize properly. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to launch into a sociological discourse here, but the point I'm trying to say is that Narad Muni is giving us how civilized people should be, what are the different types of civilized beings, and how they should be structured. Narad Muni goes on to talk about how, one should give charity to the Brahmanas, especially to the Jnananishta Brahmanas, which is the sannyasis. And obviously, if there are no sannyasis, in their absence, you can give to the other types of Brahmanas as well. But they're obviously the best types of Brahmanas to give to. Okay? Interesting point here, though. Interesting point. Madhumi talks about inviting Brahmanas to your house to offer them, like, oblations, which are like respect and offerings and things like that. And when you're offering oblations, especially if it's to, like, if you're doing ceremonies in the house where you're doing like ancestor worship, like to the forefathers, you invite 3 Brahmanas. If you're doing demigod worship, you invite 2 Brahmanas, or even 1 Brahmana is fine, but one should not try to invite loads and loads of Brahmanas. I find that a very interesting point. I'd like to now ask you guys, why do you think that might be? Why is it that Narad Muni is saying that one should not invite too many Brahmanas when one is conducting these kind of official rituals and stuff like that?
Too many cooks in the kitchen?
Okay, good point, Hema. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Brilliant. Anything else?
I think if you keep it to 2, one can do the offerings and one can do the recitation of the prayers, and they delegate the work amongst themselves that way, I think.
Yeah, very good point, actually. And that's the whole thing. You know, the one thing with the Shastras is that it's about keeping things simple. And actually, yeah, if you invite too many Brahmanas, that can cause also, every Brahmana has his own style, his own approach of how to do the ceremonies, how to do the rituals, how to do the different worships, right? Just like, for example, even if you have pure devotees, right? If you ask a pure devotee a Krishna conscious question, you can ask 5 different people, all of them pure devotees, a Krishna conscious question, right? They will give, there might be a commonality between their responses, but they will all give their own variation on the answer. It is a very personal process. You know what I mean? So with the Brahmanas, when inviting them, same principle applies. Keep it simple. Invite no more than 2, max 3, right? Of course, I will say at this point, remember that Narad Muni is talking about civilized human beings, and he's talking about rituals and worships and demigod worships and ancestor worship, etc., etc. I guess the question now is that, for us in Krishna consciousness, does this apply to us who are practicing bhakti yoga in Krishna consciousness? No, I can see Sadhvi Mataji saying, nodding her head, saying no.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. I believe, in my understanding, whatever it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam is not meant for Kali Yuga time. Kali Yuga time is mostly after when Lord Chaitanya came, and whatever we read in Chaitanya Charitamrita is mostly that apply to us now.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. I will take it one step further. For us in Kali Yuga, 100%, whatever Mahaprabhu has given us is the essential. That is what we should be practicing. However, we have to be very realistic about this, right? Yes, we have a kind of like this Krishna conscious mission to try and spread this far and wide, this wonderful Krishna conscious tradition and teachings, right, around the world. We have to also accept, though, is that we may make people aware of Krishna consciousness, and obviously we want as many people to take to it. Not everyone will, though. Not everyone will. The Vedic system is interesting. It has layers to it. A lot of people may not be ready in this, let's say in one life, to take directly to that's it. Full surrender to Krishna. Nothing else matters. A lot of people, there's people have different conditionings, different desires. A lot of people are not ready to just kind of like, just abnegate all their desires. So therefore, some elements of karma kanda, which is what this is, right? The ritualistic activities for fruitive results are there. It's inevitable, and some will take to it. But then you know what? It's also a stepping stone. Like through the Vedic culture, a lot of people may go on to different rungs of the Vedic ladder, so that eventually they're on that ladder, eventually going on the path towards Krishna. You know what I mean? So that's why, when we talk about nowadays, there's this whole understanding that yes, there is a bit of a spiritual renaissance that is slowly appearing in the world. I mean, in the midst of all the kind of socio-political chaos that's going on in the world, there is also kind of like a subtle awakening that's happening in a lot of people in the society. And of course, from there, we hope, a good proportion of them will take to KC directly. A lot of them will also take to, not KC direct, but KC peripheral. You know what I mean? Demigods, this, that, all that kind of stuff. I mean, for example, like, I'm from the Manor Temple, right? It's not that every single person that comes on a Sunday is looking to go full on surrender to Krishna. A lot of them are going there for fruitive reasons, which is fine. Krishna himself says, right? Akama sarva kamo va moksha kamo daradi. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajita purusham param. Even if you have many desires or no desires, the fact that you come to me is excellent, right? Krishna also says, Chaturvida bhajante mam. There are 4 types of people that come to me, right? One is out of love, prema. One is out of duty, kartavya. One is out of fear, bhaya. One is out of desire, asha, right? So different motivations are there. So a lot of what Narad Muni is talking about here is applicable to people of different previous yugas. It's also applicable to people of this age, for people that are not ready to just do full-on bhakti to Krishna straight away. You know what I mean? So there are certain elements there as well. Dare I say it, I think for people even practicing Krishna consciousness, there are definitely elements of the civilized human beings' instructions that are needed for devotees as well. Sometimes devotees in the past, I don't know about now, but in the past there has been this feeling. Actually, no, it does happen now as well. I'll be straight up. It happens now. Where there's a feeling sometimes that, oh, I've come into Krishna consciousness. That means I don't need to go by the normal morality and the ethics and values of society, because I'm practicing direct Krishna consciousness, which means that I can not be nice and good and be nasty and this and that, because I'm chanting my rounds. That will absolve me of everything and eventually purify me. No. Those people who chant all day long and can really be pure are very, very high level devotees. We're talking people like Haridas Thakur and stuff, where they don't need to follow civilized instructions, right? For us, it's not like that. We're not on that level yet. So, which is why we have even like the basic regulated principles that we should follow. We're not on that level where we can just say what we want and do what we want because, we're practicing KC and we're kind of risen above the morals of society. No, we have to also kind of adhere to all that as well. Yeah. So not that we have to adhere to everything. I'm not saying we have to adhere to all the kind of karma kandic rules and regulations, but it is worth knowing some of these things, and then obviously as we get more pure and purer, a lot of them will be less and less relevant for us. Okay. Anyway, okay, let's carry on. So then Narad Muni goes on in verses 12 onwards. Narad Muni is talking about how we should know the difference between dharma and adharma, and how just like there is dharma for each person and each, which is why, that's what I'm saying, as a devotee, let's say you have a certain dharma, you need to follow that dharma as well, unless you're a completely pure transcendental devotee. Let's say if you're a Vaishnav Kshatriya or a Vaishnav Brahmana, your dharmas will be slightly different, and how you react in certain situations will be slightly different. For example, sorry, give me a sec. Oh yeah, okay, I've got an example. For example, you look at Sage Vashistha. He had a massive conflict with Sage Vishwamitra. He was a great devotee sage. He was also a Brahmana. He suffered a lot at the hands of Vishwamitra. He got harassed and everything. But you know, in every single stage, he forgave. And you know what? It was expected of him because he was a Brahminical sage. One of the qualities is Shama, forgiveness. Contrast that with Arjun trying to get out of taking part in the war, in the Kurukshetra war. Arjun was like, I'm ready to forgive them all, whatever they've done. I don't want to fight this war, Krishna. Think about all the suffering. Think about all the karmic reactions. Think about the destruction of our family. Think about the destruction of the family traditions. I don't see what good is going to come of me. This is complete Bhagavad Gita chapter 1. And what does Krishna say to him? You are Hridaya Dullabham. You are Klebhyam. You are Kutastha. You are being weak-hearted. You are being weak. You are being impotent. You are wrongly being bewildered in your mind. He's not telling him, bravo, Arjun, bravo for being so forgiving. Why? He's a Vaishnav, he's a devotee, but he's a Kshatriya. So his duty is slightly different. So you have instruction for civilized human beings, but within the realm of civilized human beings, there are different types of civilized human beings. We will find out what kind of strata we fit into, and then we have to work according to dharma of that category that we belong to whilst practicing Krishna consciousness. Eventually, we may come to a stage where we rise above all of it and become complete avadutas, where varna, ashram, dharma, all these things don't matter. But until that point, until we're still in this conditioned state, we still have to adhere to some level of civilized instructions. Okay, what are the types of adharma? So we've got vidharma, which is this is a text 13 to 14. Vidharma, obstructing the execution of one's own dharma. This is a type of religion that obstructs one from doing their own dharma. Okay, you might even be bedazzled and thinking it is your dharma, but it's not. It's actually blocking you from doing your dharma. Paradharma is where someone else tries to impose a certain dharma onto you, but it doesn't apply to you. Okay? Again, the historical instance of all these things happening is mind-boggling, actually. Right? Abhasa dharma. This is basically where you just kind of like make up your own dharma as you go along. You make up your own way of worshipping this person or that deity or that demigod, and really not really giving any heed to any kind of particular prescribed duties. That's not. Sometimes you meet a lot of people, like they like to say, like, yeah, I'm spiritual, but I don't follow any scripture. It's just between me and the divine. Like, if you don't have any following any kind of process, you're just basically making up as you go along. How can you have so much confidence in your own mind that your mind is going to lead you to like this right transcendental enlightenment conclusion? Trust me, when you do Sankirtan, book distribution on the streets, you meet so many people like that. Okay, then you've got Upadharma. This is basically so-called dharmas that are created by proud, erudite people who just want to basically gain power in the world. Yeah? Some of them might even pose themselves as Vedic people, as religious people, but they're there to mislead people. Very bad. By the way, they get a very bad reaction, in the next life. And then you got Jaladharma, which is basically misinterpreting the scriptures by word jugglery. Again, do I really need to go into the kind of the current cultural, historical, social instances of where religion has been manipulated by unscrupulous people for other reasons, you know? I mean, the amount of kind of injustice and oppression and exploitation that's been done under the name of religion by people misinterpreting it, I'll be honest with you, it's part of the world. It is just the way the world is. In the future, they'll probably even do it with Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada himself said in the future, demons may come in Kali Yuga dressed with tilak and kantimala. Yeah. We should not be alarmed though. Understand this, we are in the material world. We still have to take responsibility for our own spiritual life and practice our Krishna consciousness properly. Just like all these people, like, I don't know, South America, right? All these people that went there, these so-called Jesuit priests and stuff. I'm sure some of them are genuine, but a lot of them were like just there to get the gold, isn't it? And kill the Aztecs and the Mayans and whoever it is. It's not that Jesus himself would have condoned it. They used Jesus' name. But those who are good Christians would follow Jesus properly, right? So for us as well, we must also take responsibility for our own thing. A lot of these kind of the adharmas, remember, these are not just separate groups. These are also things. These adharmic flavors can creep into our own movement. So we have to always be quite discerning and discriminative, right? To make sure that we have the right education to call these things out. Gosh, this is so relevant for us actually. And we have to be vigilant on this every single generation, man. Honestly. Okay, then Narad Muni goes on. He talks about the difference between self-satisfied people and greedy people. And obviously the fact that, people who are lusty and greedy, they'll end up just in miserable condition. Those who are content, who are basically happy to kind of accept what is theirs, comes to them, they can then actually focus more on higher things in life because they're not constantly thirsty to try and, hunt for this and I need this and I want that. Only when you can actually just make peace with whatever your lot is, with whatever Krishna sends to you, right? And then you can actually really start to relish the transcendental happiness. Otherwise, the material desires will just constantly distract you. Okay? One of the worst things, there's hunger and thirst, which is like one type of lusty desire. There's the anger, which is another type of desire, which comes from unfulfilled desire. But the worst is the greed. So, for example, insatiable greed is the biggest contributor to fall down. So, needs of hunger and thirst can be satisfied. They can eventually be satisfied. Even we know on a practical level, they get satisfied when one eats. Anger can be satisfied by chastisement and its reaction, right? But one's greed, Narad Muni mentions in text 20, is not satisfied even by conquering all the directions or enjoying everything in the world. And so then in text 21, it talks about dissatisfaction then leads to fall down. So many great scholars, leaders of great organizations, big people, they fall down into hellish conditions because they were not satisfied with their positions. You could be a millionaire and you'll be thirsting to be a billionaire. You are a billionaire, but you want more and more and more. This will never end. This will never end. We have to make that call to say, okay, enough. I'm going to accept whatever Krishna brings to me so I can focus on something higher than this. Otherwise, you just keep going and going and going and dry yourself up. Okay. Before I carry on, is there any questions or anything so far from anyone? Or any comments? Yes, Sadhvi, Mataji.
Is kind of question, but also comment. For instance, when we talk about, for instance, in text 15, 7:15:15, it talks about giving example as the snake sitting in one place and wait for the food to come to it. It doesn't do anything. So almost like we don't need to be worried. The food will come to it. You know what I mean? So this is, for me, it's difficult for me to understand if it's even possible to live in that way today. For instance, there are some country, if you don't have a roof over your head, if you don't have money to pay your rent or to have some food, let alone to be rich or something, just to live day by day, you have to work. You can't just sit still and say, you know what, someone will give me an apartment or room to live in, if it's not temple. And I doubt that all the temple have so many places for each single person that don't want to work and just want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To practice this way. So this is, for me, is kind of difficult to how can I do that? How can I sit still and not do anything, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a good point you say. Okay, there is different angles on this. So, number one, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says there are like so many different types of grihastas. There are missionary grihastas that go out and just preach. There are your established professional grihastas that work, have career, and then in this with that, when they're not working, then they do service or something, right? You've got then you got grihastas where they just, wherever comes to them, right? Like, I think it was in Chaitanya Charitamrita, I think it was Srivas Thakur. Like, you just do kirtan in his house, and somehow donations and things would come where him and his family were able to live, and he would do it. Now, obviously, what kind of grihasta you may be will be different, right? And your life circumstances, you have to work with the life situation that you're in, okay? Now, often what happens is when one comes to Krishna consciousness, when one is finding it slightly difficult to completely practice Krishna consciousness in the way they'd like, because it could be that there could be some karma or some residual reactions you have that need to get out of the way first, which needs to get purified out of you before you can have your kind of flow state where you're like in that zone where you can practice in the right situation where you can completely dive in. Like there are examples of like, what is it called? In the Bhagavatam, right? The python-like Brahmana. There's that Brahmana that lies on the ground. There's a Brahmana that lies on the ground and he doesn't eat anything, like nothing. He's really like healthy looking because things are just coming to him. But that's because he may have done some level of bhakti and maybe done enough purification from previous times where he's in that situation where he doesn't need to do it now. It's just coming to him. A lot of grihastas may not be in that situation right now. They need to work. They need to work because they don't have that they need to work maybe because of some reactions, some desires that are there inside of them that need to come out first. So their environment is actually going to make them do that before they can come out of the environment. Even let's say, for example, you're in a situation where you might be in an environment where, I have to work like this, but I really don't want to. I want to actually just focus fully on Krishna. That's your desire now. But you may have had a different desire before, and you may have accrued some sort of reaction from before that needs to get first cleared out before you can go into this next situation. But the good thing is, whatever situation is, Krishna is still making you practice Krishna consciousness, whether it's working or not working. You know what I mean? So this situation here about not striving to improve, that's one way of looking at it, right? It's about the purification of different people and where they're at, where they can actually be in that situation where they can be like a python, like a snake, and let things come to them. That's one option, one way of looking at it. Another thing is this as well, is being satisfied means are also like, atyahara prayasascha, jnana sangascha lolamcha, right? Nectar of Instruction, text 3, where one shouldn't over endeavor for mundane things that are difficult to obtain. Yes, we may have to work. Yes, we may have to, we want to try practice Krishna consciousness and work, but it also means that living in a simple way where we don't over endeavor either for mundane things, because that will just entangle us even more in what we're doing. You know what I mean? So it's about like us taking a responsibility to at what point do we actually draw a line as to how much do I need and how much do I want. Yeah. So there's two sides here. One is we have to play out and clear out and be in this particular situation, at least for now, to clear out some sort of reaction from before, right? That's why we might be in an environment where we have to just work to survive and practice our bhakti. But if your desire is sincere enough, Krishna will often change it as well soon, where you can be in a more conducive situation, where you can be like this snake. But the other situation is this, where you might be working, but you might want more and more and more. So then Krishna's saying to you, no, be like a snake now. Just be there, and whatever comes to you, comes to you. Don't endeavor too much for this. Don't hanker of it too much. So there's one where you're not enough opulence, you have to work to clear out something from before. And one is where there is too much opulence, so now you need to go down to being like a snake. Does that make sense? There's two different angles here.
Yes, but I believe it's different with different country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even that is not so easy in every single country. In some country, maybe it's possible, but not all the country. You know what I mean? Even, for instance, in Sweden, if you even want to just be in the street, there is some requirement they are going to ask you. What are you doing in the street? Why are you in the street? And they force you that you have to work so that you have apartment instead of being in. You know what I mean? So it's not so easy to practice that way.
No, I agree. But that's what I'm saying, though, that this is the issue, right? Look, we know when each human being, each devotee is born into a certain country, certain situation, certain culture. Like, for example, in India, right? India is more conducive, where a person can just go to the Himalayas or go to some forest and do some. Even now in the 21st century, I've seen it. I was on a retreat 2 years ago where we went to the Himalayas, and you see there people there like yogis, completely just come off society and there. Because the people there, because those people are practicing, they managed to get some sort of karmic combination in their charts where they're in a situation they can do that and be like that python. If you're born in the West, the fact is, look, we may have had some desires that made us being born in these materialistic countries where these Western countries, they're not so clued up on spirituality. They're not going to just like accept someone as being a yogi. They want people to work, productivity, And therefore, based on whatever karma that we've got, we've been put in those situations. We have to make the best of the situations, right? But at least then you just do enough to keep yourself going so you can focus on spirituality. Of course, there is a flip side to this. You might be a very special person who was a yogi, but you're born in the West to try and slowly change the Western countries through your little bit of bhakti, and change the situation there. So it can be both ways as well. But yeah, there's a sacrifice here. Remember, this is, it's almost like aspirational, what we should get to. But we have to also be realistic as to what is the situation we're in right now, and how do I eventually get from where I'm at right now, what do I need to do to get to this situation? Yeah? Yeah. Okay.
Prabhuji, I'm sorry to interrupt. I have just one comment about the Himalayas reference that you made about the yogis there who actually had things coming to them. But isn't it because of the culture of the country around and the people there? who are trained to be respectful to yogis and sadhus, so they will go and offer them food and stuff like that. So they are in that position, like the python, where things will come to them and they can carry on with their spirituality if they're on their path. So isn't it from another angle that, it is coming to them because of the situation that they are in the country they are in, where, people there are taught to respect religious figures.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really good karma. I mean, I'm not trying to promote India here. I think India's got a lot of issues, but at least there is this remnant of Vedic culture, which is really good. And I'll add one more thing onto that, actually. It's not just a charity thing where they're actually helping these yogis. What they don't realize, actually, those grihastas that are actually helping these sadhus, you know what? They're the ones actually getting benefited. They're the
Yes.
ones that are elevating. When you give to a sadhu, when you give to these, what are they called again? This, these, just wait, give me a sec. What are they called? Yeah, like these Jnana Nishta sannyasi type people, right? These sadhus and things. The person who's benefiting is the person who's giving, not the sadhu themselves. I mean,
Absolutely, yes.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. And that
That's
is
the
why.
sort of culture, that's Brahminical culture. That's the sort of culture that now needs to spread around the world.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. Okay, thank you.
thank you. Janu Kanya Mataji?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for giving me a little opportunity. Yes, it's exactly that. Your pious credit is sends you to different parts of the world, obviously, and different families. But coming back to the pious, the saints and sages. Now, people think they don't do anything, but they are doing something in a different way, in spiritual way. So it's hard work.
Oh,
We're thinking, because we're born to work, no matter where you're situated and who you are. There's work, and they choose the peaceful way of being, and instead of working and building a big house and then having another big house and several big houses and cars and so on, and never being happy, and you spend your whole nighttime, instead of sleeping, you are actually awake to look after your riches because you're scared somebody come and steal it. So this is the kind of life we're living in. That's a choice we make, isn't it? Because Krishna give us that freedom.
that's right. That's right.
That's right. So it's not, sometimes you say, oh, why is it I was born here? And so, if you understand the Shastras, you can make a choice and make a difference in your life, in the next life, or maybe never come back here again. So, it is hard work, even being as a python, and, they're seen as doing nothing, but they have to be tolerant. They have to be patient. Wait till the food comes to their way, the one that they choose, they will have, and so on. But if you interfere with them, of course, you'll be eating yourself, So this is what life's about. We're aware of all those sorts of things. It doesn't matter where you come from; it's what good you're going to do of it,
Yeah,
or not. You might choose. So that's the world we're in.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing is also, like, these people, like, it's an astonishing level of surrender for a person to, like, have no roof, have no place, and just I mean, that on another extreme level, the renunciates who just, like, rely completely on Krishna. And also it has to be for the right motivation, because you've got bhakti for Krishna. Sometimes it's weird, right? Like, you also shouldn't be doing the spirituality in the hope that things just come to you either, because then that's like you're doing spirituality for a cheating purpose. Like, a lot of people, they'll try and become sadhus so they can just get a free meal. That's also not there. It's almost like, it's really weird, right? Often what happens in spirituality, when you desire something too much, it eludes you. When you then get to a higher taste where you don't desire it, then it comes to you. But then you're detached from it. Like, it's just like, if it comes, like, it comes. Like, it's funny, like, like, in ISKCON, like you have sannyasis, and a lot of these sannyasis, they don't care. Like they're so focused on their Krishna consciousness that they don't care about the money stuff. And ironically, they're the ones that end up getting so much donations,
Yeah.
like thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds.
Mhm.
But they're quite detached from it. I mean, I know this. I've seen it in my own eyes. A lot of them, what they do now, just to show as well the transparency, they'll put their incomings and outgoings for public to see. Just so people don't get the wrong idea that, oh, they're just doing this for money, because they're not. But it's funny how things that they're not attached to end up coming to them. Like, I don't know if you've experienced in your life, like, when like you really want something, you're really on it, and it's not coming for you, and then you think, okay, you know what? There they go. Let me focus on something different. And then as soon as you do that, suddenly you see these things coming.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
But
yeah,
just, I suppose, if you're genuinely practicing at a level of Krishna consciousness and your desire is there for whatever it is, Krishna allows you it. I witness it every day, almost every day. But
there is something to be said here, though. There is something to be said here. When you practice Krishna consciousness, sometimes Krishna allows things to happen just to kind of keep you going.
Yeah.
There is another factor, though. When you do practice Krishna consciousness, you will get some byproducts coming through. You will get gifts coming through, whether it's talents, abilities, following, all these skills, all these kind of different things, powers, different kinds of powers and stuff. We have to be careful that if we use them responsibly in Krishna's service, great. But if we don't, they can also be downfalls. In fact, this actually kind of seg into the next verse that I was going to look at, which is verse 28, which talks about useless labor. How all the rituals, regulations, austerities that we're using to try and control the sense in the mind, the whole idea is that they're there to help us to meditate upon the Supreme Lord. But if that is not done, if that is not achieved, they are simply labor in frustration. So yes, you can practice Krishna consciousness sincerely. Yes, you might get a lot of gifts coming your way. Yes, you might get puja la pratishta, profit, adoration, and distinction. Yes, you might get fame. Yes, you might get wealth and power and charisma and all these things. But if it's not gonna make you meditate upon Krishna more and think about Krishna and ultimately develop love for Krishna, at the end of your life, it was a waste. There's a nice little analogy, little example here. Like, in Ramayana, you've got Hanuman. And when Hanuman was jumping from, the tip of Bharatvarsha, India, to Lanka, in the Ramayana, and, these different things came up from the ocean as he's jumping. And the first thing that came up was this gold mountain called Mainak. And Mainak was like, oh, dear Hanuman, you're jumping on this massive mission to see where Mother Sita is. Why don't you just take a rest on my back for a while before you go on your journey? And Hanuman's like, no, I have to be fixed on my mission. Thank you for the offer, but no, thank you. I'm going to carry on. And so that Mainak, that gold mountain, represents that the gifts, the temptations that come in our Krishna conscious life. We all go through Mainaks in our life. It could be anything. It could be our attachment to a service that we do that we become very good at, attachment to a project that we end up maybe leading or managing, attachment to a talent like we become really good kirtaniers or really good cooks, or some leader of something in the movement. And then that becomes our Mainak. Or we may end up developing a skill like becoming an amazing fund collector, or we may end up having massive following. We may end up having a massive social media presence as some top-notch preacher, etc., whatever it may be. We have to be careful of the Mainaks that come in our life. Yeah? The main thing is it leading us to developing Krishna Prema, love for Krishna? Okay? Which is why, again, text 29, there is that kind of comparison of spiritual versus material progress. And yes, one can work hard to get wealth. That does not equate with spiritual advancement. This is actually an interesting point because, you know, in religious history, right, there are certain religions, there are certain strands of spirituality. Like, I don't know if it's the Protestants or something, but, you know, there's this notion that, oh, God, if you're prosperous and stuff, that means you're blessed by God. That means you're a good religious person, which is terrible. Absolutely terrible. That means what? You know, there are lots of very, very spiritual people who are poor. Just because they're not rich doesn't mean that they're not any less advanced. We have to be very careful of this, actually, even in ISKCON. You know that we don't just end up valuing rich patrons or rich people and neglect the poor devotees, because those poor devotees might end up actually being very pure. You know what I mean? I sometimes wonder, you know, like, you know, when you read about these acharyas, you know, some of these acharyas were like out there, isn't it? Like, you know, these Avaduta types like Vamsidas Babaji or Gaurakushadas Babaji, you know, it's like, I wonder, you know, if they were to stroll into like a modern day ISKCON temple, you never know. The temple management, who knows if they'd even let them in, isn't it? They'd be like, no, you're a crazy person, you're not allowed in. Not realizing that probably it's because of their bhakti, their teachings that, you know, this temple is here, you know. Anyway, but then that requires a lot of spiritual insight on the part of the leaders of the society to actually be able to discern who are spiritually advanced or not, and not just go by externals, you know. Because I'll be honest with you, in any spiritual movement, including our one, often we do judge by externals, you know. Who's a smart speaker? Who's really successful? Oh, he's an amazing manager. Yeah, he's going to be a great leader. He's going to be a great leader of the temple or something like that, or something like that, right? Has to go much deeper than that. Yeah. All right. Anyway, let's carry on. It's quite a big chapter, so I'm just going to kind of like just whiz through. Oh my God, Dharmendra, Prabhu, it's like past 9 o'clock. Can I get another maybe 10 minutes?
I think you should be all right. I forewarned them. So this chapter is long, and
It's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let me just quickly. Yeah. Okay. So Nagmani goes on to talk about how there is also abominable actions for civilized human beings that one should not do. Again, we're looking at kind of like verse 38 to 40. So there's obviously grihastas who forsake their prescribed duties. One should never do that. Brahmacharis that give up their vows. If you're a brahmachari. There's vanaprasthas who live in the village but take part in the kind of social milieu of the society. In the sense that, you know, when you're a vanaprastha, you're meant to be more focused on spirituality. And it's not like, you know, as a vanaprastha, you'd be going to like wedding dues and social functions and having a bit of a kind of like, you know, chin wag, you know, having a little good old knees up with your people. The whole idea is that, you know, you're going to be like more spiritually focused. And of course, the ultimate one, which is the sannyasis, who then go back into sense gratification or go back into grihastha life. It's known as vampasi. You're eating your own vomit. You vomited that stuff out. Now you're going to go back and eat again? No, right? But you know what I have to say though, looking at realistically then the modern age, and this is the testament of these acharyas, they're so merciful, you know. If you look at Srila Prabhupada, he's so merciful that, you know, these things actually have happened. Like grihasthas not following the prescribed duties, sannyasis that have gone back into grihastha life, you know, ISKCON history, right? These things do happen. But you know what? The main thing is this. What is the golden rule? Smartavya satatam vishnurtavya najatuchit sarvavidi nisedasyur etayoreva kinkara. To always remember Krishna and to never forget him. And knowing that all other rules and regulations are subservient to this principle. Prabhupada always lived by that. Yes, these are stringent Vedic principles, and devotees in the past have broken this. They've gone through difficulties. Prabhupada never forsook them, you know, forsake them. He always kept them in, you know, and it's good. Some of those people that may have fallen down, they've picked themselves up and they're doing really nicely. And some who may have fallen away, you know what? Nehabi krama nasusti pratyavayana vidyate. There is no loss or diminution, even if they have fallen down. And they haven't come back yet, in the next life they'll carry on from where they left off. Thank God for that, eh? Especially in Kali Yuga. We're very weak, you know. We're not like these Vedic people that can do these vows so easily nowadays. Yeah. Okay. Now when he goes on to talk about the body as a chariot, a metaphor. You know what? I don't want to. I don't know if I'm gonna go into this because it is quite nitty gritty. I'm also conscious that this is in the Bhagavad Gita as well. You know, the body described as a chariot. Anyway, have a read of it. It's for text 41 to 46. Okay. This is an interesting point I want to mention about. 47 to 56, it talks about the paths of pravriti and nivriti. Now, pravriti is generally what is called progressive. Yeah. And we can look at it in terms of the varnashram system. There are people that will practice varnashram, like I mentioned before, being a good, dutiful Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, according to the pravriti model of varnashram, where it's about elevating yourself to a higher birth, higher status, higher enjoyment, higher prosperity, higher dignity, higher honor, higher respect. That's pravriti. Progressive. You're improving yourself, life after life after life. Path of enjoyment, path actually of entanglement. So that is actually quite aspirational for a lot of people, but for us as devotees, no. Our path is nivriti marg, which generally means negative, but in our case, in this case, it's positive. It means a path of detachment. We practice varnashram not to elevate ourselves materially in this world, but to do it for Krishna, dovetail whatever in nature we have in Krishna's service, get purified for it, and then come out of it. Come out of this whole material bubble and go back home, back to Krishna. Detachment. Walk away from it. Yeah? Yes, Sadhvi Mataji?
In 53, it's mentioned something that I think about it sometimes, but I forget to ask, so now I have the chance to ask. It says that offer your senses to Krishna, and does that mean everything? For instance, if you have pain and you really, really try to not to take drugs or anything, and you say, I'm doing that, I don't take the medicine because I want to offer that to Krishna? Could you say that?
No, you don't. One thing as well, we have to understand, like, and I actually, it's interesting, you know, the previous question.
Or for instance, also, fasting, Ekadashi. Tomorrow is Ekadashi, and I always do it even without water, because I think I can't do other services. So this is the best service I can do to offer my Ekadashi to Krishna. Is it wrong?
Your second part is fine. Doing Ekadasi, especially if it's going to help you to think of Krishna more. That's the main thing. I mean, if you're doing Ekadasi fast and you're just thinking about food, then that defeats the purpose. Prabhupada said, then better you eat. Better you eat and think of Krishna peacefully, right? But if you can do Ekadashi as a fast because it's going to help you to think of Krishna more, great, do it. Your first point, however, no, there are different angles on this, right? Again, it's whatever's going to help you to think of Krishna more. Now, you could potentially be a really, 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 really advanced devotee who, let's say, can go through pain and they can offer that to Krishna. I'll give an example. There's Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, right? Great disciple of Srila Prabhupada. You know, in his last days, he was suffering from cancer. And do you know what? His mood was that the cancerous, cells, if they are getting survival, sustenance from my body, then at least I'm giving them a service. And those are also Krishna's devotees. That's a very elevated way of looking at that situation. There's also another example of in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there was one devotee. I can't remember if it was Vasudev the leper or whether it was Sanatan Goswami, but they had this leprosy. They ended up getting leprosy where they had all these open wounds, and the wounds ended up contracting maggots. That's the one, right? The maggots, and then he would pick the maggots up and put them back in, because he's like, my body, let it be a service for these devotees, right? If one is on that level, okay. But if one is not on that level, then at the same time, one should look after the body, because it's also a gift that's been given by Krishna. And if you have access to medicine or whatever it is, treatment, do so, use it. And in fact, I'll also relate it to the previous question you asked about the snake thing. That, there is one aspect that we just be there and let things come to us. But remember, especially now that we're in Damodar month, there's two things as well. There's Krishna's mercy, but there's also our endeavor. Our endeavor to try and look after ourselves so we can serve Krishna nicely. So being proactive in the world, being a devotee, it's a really interesting thing. As a devotee, yes, we're there to kind of eventually renounce this world. Whether you're a sannyasi or not doesn't matter. All of us as devotees are ready to kind of we're there to renounce the world and go back to Krishna. But at the same time, we're not there to kind of just be in this state of self-abnegation. If we have access to wealth, resources, amenities, use them in Krishna's service. Yukta Vairagya. Prabhupada did that. Especially if it's for Krishna. Like Prabhupada was told by his doctor to take a morning walk each day. He started doing it. He was told to get a massage each day for his health so he can serve nicely. He got a massage each day. Prabhupada never refused people giving donations or money for the movement. He used it all in Krishna's service. It's not that he's saying, no, we're just going to be under a tree chanting. So it's that kind of combination of practical and spiritual, practical and transcendental. Yukta Vairagya and Vairagya, both going hand in hand. Endeavor, mercy. You know what I mean? What you do when, in terms of when to hold back and let it go, or when to actually actively use something, material energy in Krishna's service, that's on a case-by-case basis, based on who you are, what your situation is, and it's probably a conversation you probably need to have with your superior, whether it's, I don't know, your guru or your mentor or whoever it is. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'm conscious of the time, I've got up to roughly text 55. There is quite a few verses left. I don't know, Dharmendra, what's the deal? I mean, do you want to let the next speaker do the rest of the verses and then go to the next chapter?
These are all lined up, Prabhu. So what I can suggest is we either stop here, and if you've got a time, we can do a separate class on a separate day.
Okay.
But we'll speak if that suits you.
Yeah.
Or if you're happy to go along, it's entirely up to you. Shall we stop here?
I'm conscious of the time.
Yeah.
I think let's stop here. I'm happy to we can take this offline, and okay. I'm happy. Yeah, I don't mind doing a separate session just to kind of there's just a few more verses here, but it's nice to talk about them as well. Yeah.
Okay. Before we say our 3 Hari Bols, if you want to, because this always goes wrong actually, so I'd rather if you do the prayers first, the final Manjakalpa.
Oh, right.
And then we'll say our 3 Hari Bols.
Actually, you know what? Before I do finish, you know what? Actually, I'll share one thing though, because I thought this is quite nice actually. At the end of this chapter, I don't know, because I'm guessing many of you may read the chapters beforehand, but in this bit, if you look at the last section of this chapter, right? Text 69 to 80 is very nice actually. This is a Narad Muni, because he talks a lot of philosophy here. Talks about different the Pravritti Marg, the Nivritti Marg. He talks about Brahman. He talks about the falsity of this world, the falsity of the body. He then talks about the kind of philosophy of Advaita, oneness in conception, oneness in activities, oneness in interest. Let me make it very clear. When Nardmani is talking about Advaita philosophy here, it's not Mayavad. He's not saying that we are one with Krishna. He's saying we are one ekatvam. We are one in interest with Krishna. We are one in desire with Krishna. We are one in motivation with Krishna. But we are still individual from Krishna. Right? Which is what Mayavadis always get that thing twisted. Right? So that's very important to know here. Now, what Narada does then mention, actually, you know what? If I've got a couple of minutes, let me just do this actually. Right? What Narada does do, he then glorifies the Pandavas, especially Yudhishthira Maharaj, because he's talking to Yudhishthira Maharaj here, isn't it? Right? By saying that, look, this is text 68. Oh Yudhishthira, by serving Krishna's lotus feet, all of you escaped great dangers, conquered great enemies, and gathered ingredients for sacrifices. By his grace may you be delivered from material involvement. Obviously, when Nardmani is saying, by his grace may you be delivered from material involvement, that's a given. Even though he's saying maybe. Do you know why? Because he's a pure devotee. And when a pure devotee blesses you, it will come true. We also have to realize that whatever hardships, now let's take a lesson from that for us. Yeah? Escaping great dangers, conquering great enemies. We might go, now obviously you can look at the Pandavas and think to yourself, whoa, hang on a minute, but they went through a lot. Yes, but they finished it all up. They're going back to Godhead. Just like with us, when we're practicing Krishna consciousness now in this life, yes, we may go through challenges. No one said that when you take to Krishna consciousness, suddenly your life will become magically walk in the park. No. When you take to Krishna consciousness, all your reactions and karma is going to now get finished. It will first get minimized, then it'll get condensed, and then it'll get burnt up. Remember, gazillions and gazillions of lives of karma and reactions in one life, like condensed, minimized, and then burnt up. Therefore, there will be some purification there. But if you didn't go through that now, Lord knows how long you'd have to stay in this world. Lord knows how many more lives of enemies you'd have to go through, how many more lives of obstacles and dangers. But now you're finishing it all up. So when devotees go through purification, understand that it is karmic clearance. It is getting rid of that last vestige of things that are keeping you here. And then after that, Narada Muni then, in the last 10 verses, he talks about himself. He talks about how in his previous life he was a Gandharva called Upabarhana. He was beautiful, popular, talented, and because of that, obviously, he was bewildered. All the women in the celestial planet that he was in, they loved him, he was attractive and everything, And then once he was invited with his fellow Gandharvas and Apsaras, these are like heavenly beings, right? Were invited by the progenitors, the Prajapatis, to take part in a Sankirtan festival to glorify Krishna in the temple of all the demigods. And there, what happened that he started glorifying the demigods, not the Lord himself. And he was surrounded by all these women that were just like, fawning over him. And he was also like getting all the lusty desires because of it. And then at that point, the Prajapatis cursed him, saying that, you know what? You've transgressed etiquette, so therefore you'll lose all your beauty, you'll become a Sudra, go down to earth. And that's why in his next life he took birth as a Sudra, as a son of a maidservant. But you know what his saving grace was? He got the opportunity to serve the Vaishnavas, the Bhakti Vedantas. And because of that, because of serving this, in his next life, he then took birth as a son of Lord Brahma. So from here, he talks about, we can see from his own life that, the opulence and stuff sometimes can be a trap. But he was lucky. He was lucky that he actually got extricated from that. Initially, it might seem painful for him, but look what he got in return. He got the highest gift of pure love of Krishna and the opportunity to spread it all over the world. Yeah? So that's why we should be very, very glad that Krishna comes personally to stay with us, to grace us in this life that we have, in this age of Kali where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears. You know that Mahaprabhu doesn't appear in all Kali Yugas. In many Kali Yugas, just the holy name appears, not Mahaprabhu himself. So we're doubly lucky that we've got Mahaprabhu's mercy, we've got Srila Prabhupada's mercy, and the Chaitanya Lila, the Gaur Lila pastimes are still carrying on. We are part of it. So like Narad Muni, we should then also be very glad that we're in this position. Okay, I'll finish there. Yeah. Okay, shall I do the prayers, Dharmanta Prabhu?
If you can, please. Thank you,
Okay.
Prabhu.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvayeva patitanam pavane.
Govinda ki jai.
Prabhupada
Ki
ki jai.
jai.
Bhagavatam ki jai.
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 Jai.